Blackwood Mountain has a rule. Don't go into the mines. The people who lived here first knew why, and 8 friends were about to find out. The Cree didn't name it out of reverence. They named it as a warning. Wendigo. A word older than the mountain itself, older than the mines carved into its rock, older than any map that marked this place as somewhere worth visiting. For the Algonquin-speaking peoples of northeastern North America, the Wendigo was not a myth in the way we use that word today. It was not a story told to entertain. It was a category of truth, a thing that existed in the same world as hunger, winter, and death, because that is exactly where it came from. The original legend wasn't about a monster that hunted people. It was about what people became when the world stopped providing. When the cold set in and the food ran out, and survival demanded the unthinkable. Cannibalism. Not as a choice, but as a last resort. And according to the Cree, the Algonquin, the Ojibwe, once that line was crossed, something changed. Not just spiritually, not just morally, physically. The person that consumed human flesh did not stay a person. The hunger didn't go away when they ate. It got worse. It grew in proportion to what it consumed, always one step ahead, always larger than whatever was offered to it. The body stretched to accommodate it. The mind dissolved inside it. What was left walked on 2 legs, but thought in a language that had no word for mercy. That is the Wendigo. Not a demon that possesses the innocent, a transformation that punishes the desperate. Until Dawn understood this, and it built something extraordinary around it. Before we talk about what the Wendigo is, we need to talk about where it lives. Because in Until Dawn, the location is not set dressing. It is part of the anatomy of the threat. Blackwood Mountain sits in the Canadian Rockies, isolated, accessible only by cable car, and beneath its surface, stretching for miles in every direction, is a network of mines. The Washington family, who owned the mountain, had those mines dug for silver in the early 20th century. But the miners found something else down there. They found evidence that people had been living in those tunnels long before anyone put a pickaxe to the rock. Markings on the walls, bones that weren't humans, and a presence that the workers described in their journals as watching. Not threatening, just watching. Waiting. Most of the miners quit. The ones who stayed began reporting things that couldn't be logged in an official record. Sounds in the tunnels that had no source, shadows that moved against the light, and something else. A smell, like copper and cold air, like something had been alive recently and wasn't anymore. The mines were eventually sealed, The official reason was structural instability, but that was not the real reason. The Wendigo had been in those mountains long before the Washington family arrived. Long before the miners. Long before any record that survives today. What the Washington family didn't know when they bought the land is that they were building a luxury retreat on top of something ancient, something territorial, something that had been patient for a very long time. And in February of one year, 8 friends handed it exactly what it had been waiting for. We need to understand who these people are, not because their personalities drive the horror, but because one of them is the key to everything. 8 friends, 1 mountain, 1 weekend that was supposed to be a reunion. A year before the events of the game, the same group gathered at the Washington Lodge for a winter getaway. Hannah Washington, daughter of the family that owned the mountain, had developed feelings for one of the boys in the group, Mike. And she believed, because she had been given reason to believe, that those feelings were returned. They weren't. What followed was a prank, cruel and thoughtless in the way that only people who have never suffered can be cruel and thoughtless. Hannah was humiliated, publicly, in front of everyone she trusted. She ran. Her twin sister, Beth, ran after her. Into the woods. Into the dark. Into the mountain. Neither of them came back. The group fractured. The guilt set in. And 12 months later, Josh Washington, Hannah and Beth's brother, invited everyone back to the mountain. For closure, he said, this is not what it was for. But we will get to Josh later. Because right now, the more important question is what happened to Hannah after she ran. This is the part the game doesn't show you until it's too late to change how you feel about it. Hannah survived the fall. Beth did not. That matters enormously because it means Hannah was alone on that mountain. In February, in the Canadian Rockies. With no shelter, no food, no way down, and no one coming to help her. Days passed, then weeks. Her journal, which can be found scattered across the mountain in the game, documents the descent. Not into madness, not at first. Into something worse. Desperation. She was starving, and beside her was the body of her sister. The journal entries don't describe the decision directly. They don't have to. What they describe is the aftermath, the horror of what she had done, the hunger that didn't stop. That got louder. That started to feel like the only true thing left in the world. And then the entries change. The handwriting shifts. The sentences get shorter. The concerns become less human and more animal. Territory. Sound. Warmth. Prey. By the time a month had passed, Hannah Washington no longer existed in any meaningful sense. What remained was the Makkapitew. In Until Dawn's mythology, the Makkapitew is the apex Wendigo, the oldest, the largest, the most powerful entity on the mountain. And it had once been a 19-year-old girl who just wanted to be loved. This is what the Wendigo does. It doesn't arrive from the outside. It grows from within. From grief, from hunger, from the most human moments of weakness imaginable. The monster was never external. It was always the cost of survival pushed past its limit. Now that we understand the origin, we can look at what the Wendigo actually is, what it can do, and why it is objectively one of the most dangerous creatures in any horror universe. The Wendigo in Until Dawn is not supernatural in the traditional sense. There is no curse, no demonic possession, no spiritual contamination. It is a parasite, specifically a strain of fungal infection with characteristics unlike anything in the natural world. The in-game lore refers to it as Wendigo psychosis, drawing from a real psychological condition documented among indigenous communities where individuals became convinced they were transforming into the creature. But in Until Dawn, the psychosis is not delusional, it is diagnosis. The infection rewires the host from the inside out. It accelerates the metabolism to an extraordinary degree, which explains the creature's speed. It restructures bone and muscle for maximum predatory efficiency. It heightens all sensory input, particularly hearing, to a level that makes the Wendigo aware of sounds a human body is not equipped to detect. This is why staying still and staying silent is the only viable survival strategy. The Wendigo doesn't hunt by sight primarily. It hunts by sound. A heartbeat. A breath caught in the throat. The microscopic shift of weight from one foot to the other. Any of these can be enough. In terms of physical capability, the Wendigo operates on a tier that makes direct confrontation essentially suicidal for an unarmed human. They move at speeds that register as blur rather than motion. They can scale vertical surfaces with the ease of something that was built for it. They can survive injuries that would kill a human being instantly. And they are, in the context of the game's mechanics, effectively unkillable by conventional means. Fire is the exception. This connects back to the mythology directly. In Algonquin tradition, the Wendigo's one vulnerability was always heat. The creature was understood as being of ice, of winter, of the cold that kills. Fire was not just a weapon, it was a symbol, the restoration of warmth to something that had become entirely cold. Until Dawn preserves this, and this matters because it means the Wendigo is not invincible. It is simply operating in an environment that is entirely its own. The mountain is its territory. The mines are its home. The darkness is its advantage. Take those away, and the creature is still extraordinarily dangerous, but it becomes something that can be fought. Here is where the lore gets interesting in the way most players miss. The Wendigo on Blackwood Mountain is not a solitary creature. There are dozens of them, and they are connected. The Washington mining operation didn't just seal the tunnels because of structural concerns. They sealed them because of what the workers encountered in the deepest sections. A colony. Dozens of Wendigo, coexisting in a network of tunnels that stretched far beyond anything the mining crew had mapped. The creatures were not simply sharing space. They were organized, not in the way a human society is organized, but in the way a predator ecosystem is organized. Hierarchy, territory, a pecking order enforced by size, age, and strength. And at the top of that hierarchy was the Makkapitew, the apex, the oldest, the one that had been there the longest. Hannah. And this is the detail that recontextualizes everything. When the group arrives at the mountain, they are not walking into random predator territory. They are walking into a structured ecosystem, one that has a ruler, one that in some sense recognizes them. Because the Makkapitew was once one of them. Whether Hannah retains any fragment or memory or recognition is something the game deliberately leaves ambiguous. There are moments, small ones, that suggest the answer might be yes. The way she moves around certain characters, the hesitations that feel like something other than predatory calculation. But the game never confirms it. And that ambiguity is intentional because the horror of the Wendigo is not just what it does to the body. It is the question of what it leaves behind. Is there still a person in there? Does it matter? We need to talk about Josh Washington. Because Josh is not a side character. He is the emotional spine of the entire story. Josh lost both of his sisters on that mountain, Hannah and Beth. The two people closest to him in the world disappeared because of a prank that his friends participated in. And nobody came forward. Nobody took responsibility. Nobody even acknowledged what their cruelty had cost him. So Josh brought them back, not for closure, for confrontation. The traps, the scares, the elaborate horror scenarios Josh constructs in the first half of the game are not random. They are targeted. They are designed to make his friends feel exactly what Hannah felt that night. Humiliated, helpless, terrified. Josh is not a villain. He is a grieving brother who broke under the weight of something no one should have to carry alone. But the mountain has its own plans for Josh. If certain choices are made, Josh does not escape. He is captured. He is dragged into the mines, and in the mines, he encounters the Wendigo. A Wendigo that, depending on whether the player found Hannah's journal, he now knows was once his sister. And then, something happens that the game handles with extraordinary cruelty. Josh transforms. The infection takes hold. The hunger begins, and the cycle continues. The Washington family, who built their retreat on top of something ancient and terrible, ends the story with two members consumed by the very thing their land had been keeping secret for decades. There is a version of this story where Josh and Hannah are the only real victims, where the monster is not the Wendigo at all, but the cruelty that set everything in motion. Until Dawn knows this, and it never lets you forget it. So, let's talk about the question on your screen right now. Could you survive a Wendigo? The honest answer is probably not, but the conditions under which survival becomes possible are specific and worth understanding. The Wendigo's primary advantage is sensory. It hears everything. This means the single most effective survival strategy is not speed, not strength, not weapons. It is control. Control of your breathing, control of your movement, control of your fear response, which is the hardest thing to control when something that used to be human is standing 3 feet away from you in the dark. The game teaches this through its butterfly effect system. Characters who panic make noise. Characters who make noise get found. Characters who get found die. The survivors are not the strongest or the fastest. They're the ones who can hold still when every nerve in their body is screaming at them to run. Fire remains your only reliable offensive option. A Wendigo exposed to an open flame will retreat. It will not press an attack into a burning space. This is consistent with the mythology and gives you a narrow window to exploit. The mines are the worst possible terrain for a human being facing a Wendigo. Enclosed, dark, acoustically complex, meaning sound bounces in ways that make it nearly impossible to locate the source. And the creature knows every tunnel, every drop, every blind corner. Your best chance is always outside. Open ground, firelight, and the cable car, if it is still running. But here's the thing the game doesn't tell you directly. The Wendigo is not trying to kill you. It is trying to feed, and there is a difference. A predator that wants you dead will pursue until the job is done. A predator that wants to eat will take the easiest available option. If you are not the easiest option, if you are still, if you are quiet, if you do not present yourself as prey, the Wendigo will move on. This is not mercy. This is efficiency. And understanding the difference between a creature that hates you and a creature that is simply hungry might be the most important survival insight the game has to offer. The Wendigo of Until Dawn is not unique in horror. The idea of a predator born from human desperation is as old as the first winter that lasted too long. But what Until Dawn does that most horror doesn't is refuse to let you hate the monster cleanly. Hannah Washington ran into those woods because people she trusted humiliated her. She survived something no one should have to survive alone. She held on longer than anyone should have to, and when she finally broke, she was punished for it by becoming the very thing the mountain had always been waiting to make. The Wendigo isn't a creature that arrived. It is a creature that was made by isolation, by hunger, by a grief so complete it rewrote the biology of the person carrying it. The Cree knew this. That is why the name was a warning and not a myth. Because the Wendigo doesn't come for you from outside. It waits inside the worst moments of being human. And if those moments go on long enough, it always finds a way out. Blackwood Mountain is quiet now. The lodge is ash, the cable car is still, and somewhere in the tunnels beneath the snow, in the dark, where the miners first knew to stop digging, something ancient waits. Patient, hungry, and very, very good at staying still.